I am Simon and I'm trying to get bike fit again after 6 cycles of chemotherapy. It's left me a broken man. Can I be fixed? Now then, YouTube. There's a famous artistic landmark in Leeds in Yorkshire where I've spent most of my adult life that neatly sums up what this channel is all about. Much love to Chumbawumba. For those who don't know, I was at one time the host and producer of the official Zwift podcast. The Zwiftcast, I did that for many moons. Now, if you're not familiar, don't fret. I think the stuff on this channel may still interest you. But for those that were Zwiftcast listeners, then rather abruptly after rebooting the cast last summer, I just vanished. Unspecified health issues were mentioned, but detail was there not. Well, I left the Zwiftcast because I got diagnosed with a stage 4 prostate cancer. Yeah, I know. And I had to start a pretty punishing treatment regime too sweet. Weirdly, at exactly the same time, Sir Chris Hoy also revealed he had terminal prostate cancer. So that gives me two things in common with the great Olympian, love of bikes being the only other one. That was all back in October 2024. And since then, I've been off the bike completely in what I like to call in a slightly melodramatic fashion, chemotherapy hell. But here we are, almost 6 months later, and where are we? Well, in short, I'm a physical wreck. The chemo is brutal, and combined with some other drugs I've been taking, the physical effects have been profound and not in a good way. So the aim of this channel is to report on my progress as I attempt to get back to something like the cyclist I used to be. I've been knocked down, but I'm determined to get back up again. You want to come along for the ride?
That's it, YouTube. That's it. 5 months and 6 cycles of chemotherapy completed 2 minutes ago. I'm so happy.
Okay, YouTube, just back from the hospital 5 minutes ago, and I suppose this is where the ride really starts. The first thing to say is that chemo is working. I mean, that's the primary thing, eh? My bloods are exactly where the doctors would like them to be, exactly. And the cancer is in abeyance. You can't say it's in remission in my case, but it's under control. Now, it comes at a cost, of course it does. Chemo is strong medicine. In the next few days, I will be at my absolute lowest ebb, rock bottom. The cumulative effects of the 6 cycles of chemo at gas mark 8. But the thing about rock bottom is there's now only one direction of travel. Like Marco Pantani here, I'm going to be going upwards, maybe not as fast as he did, and I'm moving onwards. Well, that's 2 directions of travel, but you get my drift. Now, I think it's worth dwelling a little while on the side effects of the chemo, not to moan, though I will be doing that, but to understand my starting point in the campaign. This is just my personal experience. For others, it will be different. The big one is fatigue, ever-increasing, bone-deep weariness. This is cumulative, and it gets worse as the treatment progresses. Hours and hours in the armchair. The enforced idleness is murderous. Sometimes just getting a shower and getting dressed feels like climbing a mountain. Welcome to my second home, the armchair. The low ebb that I was telling you about that was coming is here. I had my chemo on Thursday, my last one. Friday I was okay, Saturday I was kind of starting to go down a bit. Yesterday, Sunday, oh my Lord, I was run over by a truck. So let's quantify this using a generic metric everyone's familiar with, step count. In 2023, my daily step count was just over 16,000. We'll call this baseline. After 2 chemo sessions, this had gone down to an average of 8,880 steps per day for the month. After a total of 4 chemo sessions, this had dropped further to 7,100 steps per day. By the end of chemo, with 6 sessions complete, step count had stabilised at a pretty poor 3,700 per day. Compared to baseline, just on steps alone, I am 1/4 as active as I used to be. Not good. Let's talk about hair loss. I didn't really fancy it, not for vanity reasons, but I just figured that looking at a bald person in the mirror every day was not going to be conducive to the sum of my human happiness. So I went for the cold cap during treatment. This is a machine that pumps water at -4 degrees centigrade through a mesh of pipes on a close-fitting kind of skull cap that's clamped firmly on your head and held even more tightly in place by a second insulating cap. Not flattering, not enjoyable. Imagine an ice cream headache for 2 hours. That's the cold cap. When eventually you peel it off, you've got frost in your hair. But it works. My hair is brittle, coarse, and prone to a life of its own. But it's present, and it will slowly return to normal, as will the rest of me. Let's get a bit more nerdy with the numbers. We cyclists are like that. Resting heart rate is often seen as a rough proxy for fitness. Cyclists often have a very low resting heart rate. For my baseline, I'm going to spring of 2022, when I was in a pretty reasonable state of cycling fitness. My resting heart rate in that period was 46 beats per minute. After 6 rounds of chemo, it's up to 58 beats per minute. That's a pretty chunky increase of 25%. Heart rate variance, or HRV, is another measure that cyclists use. It's a big topic to explain, but HRV measures the gaps between heartbeats, which vary, and interprets them. As a very, very rough rule of thumb, higher is better. I mean, it's way, way more complicated than that, but we can't go into that here. Again, back in spring 2022, my HRV was hovering around 60 milliseconds. After the chemo was finished, it had declined to an average of 45 milliseconds. Again, slightly weirdly, another drop of 25%. And then there's weight, the cyclist's curse. I fluctuate, but my baseline is around 83 kilos. I'm now about 92 kilos. I put on 9 kilos, or just under 20 pounds. That is going to slow me down going uphill. So chemo knocks you down. Some of it's self-inflicted, as I've been guilty of excessive and reckless snacking. But much of it is out of your control. That then was the outcome of chemo. The process, well, can you hear that? That's me stretching this analogy to breaking point, but it is a bit like this. Each 3-week round of chemo is a bit like being in a ring with a stronger opponent. You get hit, but you get back up. 2 days after the infusion, you're on the canvas. It's a slow motion count to get back on your feet again. It takes about 3 days. For a week after that, you're a bit hazy and punch drunk. The final week, it's more of a fair fight. But then, the bell goes again. Seconds out, and you start another round. 6 of those in total. But as I said, it's done, and I don't need to climb back in the ring. So, what's next? Well, the plan is to get back on the bike, obviously, but I have to accept and set my expectations. In time terms, it's not going to be soon. Recovering and rehabbing from the chemo will take time. It's powerful stuff, and it takes a while to leave your system. In performance terms, I asked the consultant how close I might be able to get to a pre-chemo state of cycling fitness. He reckoned 80, maybe 90% of the old me. I'd be happy with that. So what's the plan, Stan? Well, in Chapter 2, I'll go into a little more detail on that. I'll also gird my loins to talk to you about a subject I've studiously avoided in this video, and that is living with stage 4 cancer and accepting that at some point in the future, it's going to get me. But that is some way off, and I got plans. I'd love you to join me as I recover, so please do feel free to comment, especially if you've been through something similar. Thanks for watching YouTube. See you next time.